focus on the things you can change, and then you'll slowly start to see it repair, and you'll slowly start to see the success and the growth at the other end of it, because inputs yield outputs. So it is in your hands. Like, make yourself the problem so you can make yourself the solution.
Today we're going to do things a little bit different. Normally we do the show in Spanish, but one of the things that we share in common as immigrants is that things go beyond our language. So we would like to talk today to Mohamed Kandil, who I met through the industry. So being in finance, we meet people that are in insurance and all sorts of spectrums of the financial industry. And Mohamed is very impressive to me because he is a young, very professional insurance person, and he's going to talk about what he does in the field.
But wait, before we get started, we always like to tell everyone, if you like the content that we're sharing with you today, please don't forget to give us a like. Don't forget to share this video with your friends, with your family. Make sure you help us grow. What we do here is we bring information like the name of the show implies, to help you prosper. Yes, today we're going to talk to an insurance producer, an insurance agent, and a gentleman that I just had the pleasure of meeting. I know you know him for some time, but to me, it's always refreshing to have professionals of different industries that we use, right? We got to use these sort of services, and so to get the insight, to get that, that level of knowledge, right, that somebody with experience that works there on the day-to-day brings to the table, to me, that's awesome. So welcome to the show, Mohamed.
Oh, thank you so much. It's an honor to be here. Thank you so much for having me. Yes, my name's Mohamed. I'm part of I'm an agent for Goosehead Insurance, the Kandil Hindi agency in Mountain Lakes, New Jersey. So Goosehead Insurance is the first insurance brokerage that catered their model to the home buying industry. I think that's a very important niche to have, because a lot of first-time home buyers don't really know what goes into the insurance piece of their closing. I feel like me as an insurance broker, I came from a State Farm background. State Farm's great, but I came from that background, and in that position, it was more of a sales role to me. So essentially, I was just selling insurance. When I moved over to Goosehead, I kind of had a bit of a mindset shift, and I had to realize I'm not just selling, I'm actually protecting people's assets that they worked so hard to obtain. So I had to basically, after having that mindset shift myself, I had to realize that it's important to educate my clients about the same exact thing. This is not something that's just being required by your lender. As far as auto goes, it's not just something that's being required by the state of New Jersey. It's actually the thing that is protecting you and these assets moving forward. A lot of people think insurance is a one-size-fits-all because they don't know any better. But that's actually not the case. There are a lot of things on your insurance policy that are not covered unless you actually endorse them and unless an agent actually protects you with them. So I think that education piece is very important, and making sure that your clients actually understand how they're covered and that they have a say in the matter. They need to have the opportunity to customize their own coverage.
So to me, that's awesome, right? When I hear somebody say things like educate, when I hear somebody say things like people need to understand. And that's, part of the reason why Tanya, I, and Leo do this is because we want to get that information out to the public. Oftentimes we think, I just have to comply. Right?
Yeah.
I buy insurance because they're making me buy insurance. And sure enough, if you happen to buy a vehicle cash, right, you're like, what's the cheapest insurance that I can get?
Yeah.
But when you say things like educate, when you say things like understand, there's obviously a different component to insurance that oftentimes people overlook. So tell us a little bit about that, right? I know we have to comply with the law, but what should we be looking for when we look for coverage, and how do you and your company provide that service to the client?
Definitely. So actually in our office, we say a lot that, because I'm going to touch on what you just said, a lot of times we say that the cheapest insurance you can buy can be the most expensive insurance you can buy sometimes, because if you're not endorsed properly and you have a claim for something that you don't actually have covered on your policy, you're taking the bill on that one.
Right.
You know what I mean? You're responsible for covering that. And the little bit more you could have paid in insurance premium by making sure you were properly protected would have saved you so much more in the long run. There's so many things, common homeowner losses, that buying a home and buying insurance, you just assume, oh, I'm good, I got homeowner's insurance.
Right.
But water, backup sewers, and drains, that's one of the most common homeowner loss, but go figure, it's not actually covered unless you add it to your policy.
Mm-hmm.
Equipment breakdown for any of your permanently installed home systems, like your central air, your furnace, your boiler. As a homeowner, most of the time they assume that's just included, and it's not. You have to add that to your policy. Service line coverage, that's another one, covers buried utility lines, lines that go underground and out to the sewers. You need to add that to your policy if you want to be covered for that. You also want to be conscientious of what deductible do you have on your policy.
True.
Because one, is it worth it to put in the claim based off your deductible? The cost of the damage could be $1,500. The deductible's $1,000. You don't want to affect your insurance for the next 5 years because you put in a claim for something that's $1,500
Right.
when you had to pay $1,000 of that out of pocket. So you want to, one, make sure you have a low deductible so when a calamity hits, you're not paying an arm and a leg to even use your insurance. But two, you want to be conscientious of how you're using insurance, what claims are worth putting in. You might have the coverage for it, but that doesn't mean it's worth putting in the claim. So it's always good to have a good agent behind you that can also advise you through this. I have clients call me all the time about claim situations where I'm so glad they called me first.
Right.
Because if they called their insurance company, they, one, would have either found out that that's something that insurance doesn't cover altogether, or two, they would have proceeded with the claim and saved $500 and then had a loss the next year that was catastrophic that they needed to use their insurance for. And now 2 claims within a 5-year period, their rates are skyrocketing for the next 5 years. Where if they would have omitted that initial claim and not put it in to begin with, it's not as bad, and they actually used the insurance in the time where they actually needed to.
So would you say it's always advisable to stay in touch with your agent? Not just use the agent for the purchase, but actually constant communication with that agent?
Absolutely. I think you should always key your agent in and keep them in the loop, especially because you don't know. Yeah. It's the first time you're hit with a situation like this. But we've been in the industry for years. We know, and we're glad to advise you.
So I found that one of the reasons why I think you're extremely professional, and I love that you really have this passion for what you do. I actually, we've been in the industry for a long time, and
just a couple of years.
Oh yes, well yes, yes, only a few years. So servicing clients for a long time. The name of the game most of the time for clients is let me find the cheapest insurance.
Yeah.
And they will be advised as to what kind of insurance they can get, and I think that what I really appreciate from you is my personal experience with you was actually he does my insurance, my personal insurance. And the reason why I chose Mohammad was because he helped me overcome the challenge of looking at the cheapest insurance. So he really showed me how he broke it down for me, and then he showed me, okay, this is cheap and this is what you need.
Yeah.
And then when I looked at the difference, I'm like, oh my goodness, I'd be a fool not to take what I need, because my past experience had shown me that I potentially could have this loss. He actually saved me about $20,000.
Oh my goodness!
By telling me to take an $8 rider.
Yep.
And I was
service line.
I was like, $8. That's like nothing. Fine, I'll take it. And sure enough, 3 months after I purchased my home, I did some landscaping in my home. And there was a landscaper that just went right over my main line.
Oh.
And I had no idea I had sewage seeping into my yard until we smelled it and we're like, oh my God, something's wrong. And it was that my main line had been broken, and that was covered.
Yeah.
$8 saved me $20,000.
I think I'm going to be calling you so you can pay my policy.
Anytime, man.
But I think that's the thing with new homeowners is that they're scared most of the time, and they want the cheapest insurance, whether it's homeowners or car insurance. but understanding that the potential loss is so much more costlier,
Absolutely.
and that the risk is really real.
Yeah.
Especially, what I like was that you kind of asked the questions for the area, and then you're like, "Hey, did you know you could do this?" And you're like, "Okay." It's selling. It's not selling, but it's advising of the options,
Sure.
right?
Sure.
Absolutely.
Would you say? I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt. Go ahead.
No, you're fine. I was just gonna say, insurance it's peace of mind. You hope these things never happen. You don't want them. They might not, but they very well can. And having good insurance just it provides you peace of mind, which is invaluable.
I've heard that the cheapest insurance is often the most expensive insurance
Yeah.
if you have to use it, right? Or when you
Yeah.
have to use it, right?
Yeah.
So obviously looking for the cheapest is not always the best. So thank you for
Absolutely.
sharing that for
No,
us,
definitely.
with us. What advice would you give somebody, say that is watching the show right now, that is entertaining maybe switching insurance agent or entertaining buying insurance, right, for whatever their asset is that they
Yeah.
need to cover?
So I would say if your insurance agent is not asking you enough questions, you should be worried.
Okay.
Because there are a lot of eligibility factors and discount opportunities that come involved with putting together a fine-tuned quote. So there are a lot of questions that need to be asked. There are a lot of answers needed to make sure that you're placed with the best fit for you and that you're properly protected for your particular needs. I also think it's a benefit to you to work with a broker, because when it comes to you want good rate or you want good coverage, you can have both. You can have both. When you find the right carrier, you can get a really good rate that's significantly better than the next best and still hit all of those coverage marks. So I think going the broker route, it definitely allows you to find your best fit. We're essentially like matchmakers. We match the right client with the right carrier. Every carrier has a different ideal client, and when you make the right fit and you make the right match, they're getting the most bang for their buck. So you can have both.
And then in the broker world, I think that most people also feel like broker, they're going to put me in with like no name companies, correct?
Yep.
And you actually have some big names in there,
Yeah.
because I know you represent Progressive, Berkshire Hathaway.
Yeah.
And those are just the two that I know of, but these are like big name companies with AAA ratings, meaning they're going to pay your claim.
Yeah.
So that's something that's interesting too, which is Goosehead has a great collection of
Yeah.
big companies.
A-rated carriers. Goosehead Insurance, we're actually one of the fastest growing brokers in America right now. And we've built a really good name for ourselves, and we have a reputation to uphold. So we take that huge into consideration when we're acquiring carriers. We want to make sure that every carrier we bring on is a carrier we can trust placing our client with. So we don't want to work with just any and everybody. We want to make sure that every carrier that we're offering is a good option. And that way it allows us to go through full range of carrier, find their best fit, and make sure that they're comfortable with the carrier that they're placed with.
Now, why Goosehead?
I
I'm
was
curious.
just gonna say. Yeah.
Why Goosehead for me?
Or why Goosehead the name?
Oh, Goosehead the name. It's actually it's a silly story, but it's a good one. So the CEO, Mark Jones, it's kind of a nickname he had between him and his granddaughter.
Oh, okay.
And they started this. So actually, the story of Goosehead inspires me immensely. Goosehead Insurance started as a regular, just independent mom and pop insurance agency. You know what I mean? Just like my own personal franchise. Like it started just like that. And Mark Jones had such a great vision. And he said, I want to be one of the top personal lines carriers in the United States that we've ever seen. And he was on that mission. He jet set towards it. And he just made all the right moves, brought on all the right partners, and just built something so huge. Now there's over 13 franchise agencies outside of the corporate office that already is the biggest insurance agency I've ever seen. So definitely a great story. I'm glad to be a part of such a great company that was built on such great bones. And they do care like about coverage. Like I learned the most about insurance myself. That's when I was mentioning earlier that mindset shift. they taught me so much in 2 weeks of training to start up my agency than I knew in my whole 4 years in insurance prior. Their main focus is put the client first and care about the client and focus on coverage. Don't sell on price, sell on coverage. Protect these people.
Makes
That's
sense.
what they're coming to you for.
Yeah, makes sense.
So-
So you were obviously in speaking to you, it comes across, and we had the opportunity to speak before
Yeah.
we hit the record button. But you seem very, very passionate about insurance. I mean, it just there's some people that just it exudes out of them,
Yeah.
right? So why? What is so magical about insurance for you?
It really is just realizing that you can make a huge difference in somebody's life in some of their lowest moments.
Okay.
You know what I mean? Just you doing right by your clients, it can change their lives in a crazy way. Like Tanya mentioned, one little endorsement that we wanted to advise on adding on her policy saved her $20,000. That's on the small end. There
Yeah.
are some big losses out there and some big, catastrophes. Sorry, I lost the word. There's big catastrophes out there that can hit, and if you're not covered properly, if you're not actually caring about your clients that you're working with, then you can really, really set them back. You can really ruin their lives in a way. I mean, I don't believe you can ever have your life ruined. I feel like there's always a way to rebuild. But it's a setback, and you don't want to be the reason anybody's going through a setback. So, and not only that, the way we work only on referrals. So my job is building relationships. My job is making friends. And then my clients, they become my friends. Like, I don't call them and gather quick bits of information and then call them back. No, I keep them on the phone every step of the way. I'm keeping them while I'm quoting through the carriers. I'm building that rapport. I'm building that friendship. I'm getting to know so many amazing people on a daily basis. And I love that. Like, that's I've always said if I had any talent in life, it's being good with people. And it's making friends. And I have a passion in that, and that's essentially what my job is.
And you get paid for doing that.
And I get paid for it. It's like a win-win. It's the best scenario.
That's awesome. Now, we also, I'm asking the questions here. I'm sorry, I don't mean to, if you have a
No.
question, jump in. But when we started talking, you sort of kind of mentioned that this is a family affair, right? Like you guys, I think
Yeah.
from a family perspective, have been doing insurance for some time. Why don't you tell us a little bit about that? Because I find that very interesting.
So insurance has been in my family since I was born. Excuse me. I started this agency with a business partner, Summer, and she's also my first cousin. Her mom has been an insurance agent with State Farm, or an insurance producer with State Farm, since before I was born, and it happened to be right down the street from my house. So I essentially grew up going to that office. So I always had some sort of tie to insurance, but I never really knew the ins and outs of the industry. And she essentially kind of put me towards that insurance path for as far back as I can remember. And it ended up becoming across of me fighting that. I had other plans for myself. I was heading in a different direction. And fate kind of pulled me back. I was coming out of college, didn't have any internships under my belt. In today's society, it's almost like a double-edged sword. You can have the degree, but if you don't have the experience, it's not really that easy to find the career path that you want to look towards. So I came to a point where I had that conversation with my aunt. We're very close, by the way. She's like one of my best friends too. So we had that conversation. She's like, "Are you ready to stop fighting it? Are you ready to explore the insurance world again?" And I was like, "You know what? I feel like God's telling me something. Like I need to start looking into this path." And I did find an opening with the State Farm agency in West Caldwell. When I started there, I made it very clear I have bigger goals for myself. I don't want to be a producer in an agency for the rest of my life. I want to be an agent. And she took that very seriously. She actually set me up on the agent aspirant program from early stages.
What's that, agent?
Agent aspirant program.
Okay.
Excuse me. So that's essentially a program where we go on regular meetings, we have regular tasks to basically get prepped and ready to apply for opening agency with State Farm.
So sort of kind of like a training on the job for becoming...
Exactly. And certifications. It was a whole shebang. It was a 4-year process for me going through that agent aspirant
going
program.
to college all over again.
Yeah, exactly. And working as a full-time producer, I also wanted to perfect the craft before I went and kind of started it on my own.
Right.
And I finished the program, got all the requirements set. I was ready to start applying for agency the next year. And then my business partner's agent, my aunt's agent as well, was approached by Goosehead. And their agent was really enticed by the opportunity, but he was like, I'm looking to retire in the next couple of years. I'm not looking to jump ship. And he did. He retired from a very successful State Farm agency. But I do know an agent aspirant in West Caldwell that I think could benefit from hearing this opportunity. Initially, I was like, nah, I'm good. Like, I spent 4 years in the agent aspirant program. I'm already set. But I took the meeting out of respect for him, and I'm so glad I did. It changed my life, and it was the best meeting of my life. And I didn't even, I didn't know it was going to head in that direction. I went in with every intention of combating it and just walking out and being like, no, I'm okay. But it really, as I sat through that meeting, I'm like, they're built on really good bones. The power of choice. You know what I mean? When situations arise where one of my clients is being dropped or their rates increase, I don't have to tell them sayonara. I can tell them, come right back to me. We'll reshop the market. We'll get you taken care of. And hopefully you'll maintain my client for life.
It's interesting because you mentioned twice you resisted change. And when you said, okay, it kind of just fell into place for you. Now, how old were you when you started the agency?
This was about 4 years ago. So I was about 26, 27.
And the reason I ask, I probably shouldn't, but I just think it's fascinating because it's insurance by nature just has such a bad connotation of like boring, right? And it's just not a very exciting field, and it's such a essential one because everybody needs insurance. So to attract someone, especially as young as you and Summer, and you guys are very lively people, it's just fascinating that you both kind of agreed to go in that direction. But you said it was in your blood, right?
Yeah, well, it was in my blood. And
it's funny because oftentimes, there's always... Just about every career has some sort of boring aspect to it, right?
Yeah.
But those people that are successful are the ones that find some sort of way of making that, merging their personalities, merging what they love to do with that career.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden it doesn't become work, right? Like you said before, to you, you're getting paid to make connections and build relationships with people. And I'm thinking, no, you're an insurance agent. You're getting paid to sell insurance. But that's not the way you look at it, So that mind shift.
It's perspective.
Yes, that perspective, that mind shift. A lot of times, we talk about that here at the show often.
Yeah.
Where we tell people, you got to change the chip.
Absolutely. You have the power to change it. You have the power to change that. You have the power to create the environment you want and the way you look at things. And our office, I'm honestly saying this, it's a joy for me to walk into the office every day. The culture we created, the atmosphere, us all having like-minded people sharing the same mission, it really creates such a great space, and I actually love walking into my office every day and doing what I do.
That's awesome. You created a great culture. It's funny because I just posted something actually. It was Mateen Cleaves. He was an ex-NBA player, and he talks about mindset. It is the one thing that we can control.
Yeah.
Because everything else can be, you can have a bad day, you can have bad things happen at work, but mindset is everything. So if you create that culture, definitely makes, going to work a lot easier. And I love that with insurance, people forget that you have to at least be presented your options.
Yeah.
And if you say no, and if you have a loss, you have a loss. But if you were never even presented the offer, then that's shame on not just the person, but shame on the agent. Because how would I know what my options are. I'm not the professional. I come
Yeah.
to you and I ask you for help, and you give me, and I tell you I don't want to spend too much, so you give me my cheapest option. But you don't tell me, hey, if you don't take this, this is what you're leaving behind. That was what got me with you. It was
Yeah.
like, interesting. You really showed it to me, and then I made my decision. And in insurance, it happens all the time. I hear it in the auto
Yeah.
industry, where people lease a car, or they buy a car and they don't get that gap insurance,
Yeah.
and then they have a loss, and then
Right.
people are left with these
On the hook,
these
yeah.
losses that they have to pay out of pocket. And I've seen people have their credit destroyed because of that.
Yeah.
And then the impact is huge, and
That's
it takes
great.
years to repair, because most people don't feel like that's their responsibility. They don't pay it, they fight it, they dispute it, they get into payment arrangements, or sometimes they just let it go, and it's awful.
Definitely.
And I think that comes from
Guidance.
misguidance, right?
Yeah.
It-
Definitely. I can't tell you how many clients that will run through the quote and they just want to check out a couple other options. And my only ask to them is, you find something lower, you send it my way. I promise you I will never steer you away from it if it's covering you properly and the rate is better. They'll send it my way, and sometimes not only is it a carrier I write for, in which case the premium's only lower because it's just not endorsed properly, but it's just that. It might not be a carrier we write for, but they're missing all the endorsements. They have a $5,000 deductible. Sometimes they have a 2% deductible. Just to break that down really quickly, a 2% deductible means 2% of your dwelling limit. So if your dwelling limit is $800,000, that means your deductible is $16,000.
Wow.
And a lot of people don't realize that 2% looks good on paper,
Yeah.
saves you some money, but if you ever have to go and put in that claim one day, you're on the hook for $16,000 before the insurance steps in. So that's what we'll do. We'll take that policy and we will dissect it and we'll compare it to ours, and we'll advise, this premium's definitely lower. You're not wrong, but you're missing this, that, and your deductible is 2%. And we let them know, if price is your focus, I have to give you what you want.
Right.
All I can do is properly advise, but I can't make the decisions on your insurance. And I'll show them, when I cover you the same exact way, we're actually even lower than that, but this is all the things you're missing. And these are all the things that can cause issues later. Now it's for you to decide.
Right.
Yeah.
So we've been talking a lot about the love that you have for this industry, how successful you are within the industry. What would you say were some of the challenges, some of the those moments where you just kind of felt like, oh, I'm going to throw in the towel? Have you experienced any of those? And what advice would you give somebody that is going through that now?
So I think mindset, as we mentioned earlier, is everything. Because our first year, we were broke.
Yeah.
We literally didn't have anything. We were scrummaging for like change to get like munchkins to walk into an office with. But I think what kept us going was a positive mindset. We knew the first year was going to look like that. So we would look at each other and smile and just be like, humble beginnings. You know, like we knew what we were doing now was for the greater good of what could come later. So that first year, we focused a lot on just focusing on the things you can control and the things you can change. I think that was huge, was like subconsciously, there are other factors that you want to blame. You want to say, we're not excelling quicker because of this, we're not excelling quicker because of that. And then you come to a realization that if you're blaming all of those things, you have no control over the situation. We started to realize the real tool and the real power is in blaming yourself and finding your flaws, finding the things that you could be doing different that you're not already. And when we realized that, that was the most powerful tool ever, was accountability, was realizing, don't focus on the things you can't change. Like even in today's market, don't focus on the things you can't change, because then you can't fix it.
Right.
Focus on the things you can change, and then you'll slowly start to see it repair, and you'll slowly start to see the success and the growth at the other end of it, because inputs yield outputs. So it is in your hands. Like, make yourself the problem so you can make yourself the solution. If
That's
there's
such
any
great
advice
advice.
I love it.
Yeah,
I love
absolutely.
it.
Definitely.
You know, we focus the show on not only bringing information to the consumer, but also a lot of times we focus the show on talking to the entrepreneur, right? The person that is, you know, thinking about, hey, I have the perfect recipe for this cookie, and every time I make it, my family loves it. I should go into business, right? There is that fact that you're going to go through that struggle at first. And so oftentimes, you know, when you plant a seed and you begin to water it, it doesn't yield the fruit right away. It first has to grow, and you got to take care of it, you got to trim it, and so on and so forth. But I love the mindset. I love the focus on what you can change, right? As opposed to focus on the things you cannot change. The market is what it is, right?
Yeah.
Things are going to go up, things are going to go down, they're going to change. But if you focus on you, that is some great advice. I really applaud you for that. And thank you.
We live by that.
Thank you for sharing it with all of us.
Of course, my pleasure.
To me, it's always an honor to have a guest as bright and, like Tanya keeps saying, as young as you are, right? I'm gonna dye my beard. But always a pleasure to have somebody like you, because
the pleasure's all mine.
You're a breath of fresh air, right? Because in this industry, or in the financial field, right? There's always that, you know, sort of kind of mistrust a lot of times that people have when they approach a salesperson. But in your case, you know, you come across as that individual that you're not selling. Like you said, and I loved it when you said it. You're building a relationship with people.
Absolutely.
I think if all of us take that approach at all times, we would be a lot more successful.
Oh yeah.
You know, so
it's the client first, right?
Yeah, client first mentality.
Yeah.
So I always end all of my shows by saying the following. I always say, you can succeed, you can prosper. You have to want it, you have to educate yourself, and you really have to go out there and put the effort into it.
100%.
So thank you for coming.
Of course,
if
my
somebody
pleasure.
wanted to find you, how would they be able to reach you? Can you share that with us?
Yeah, of course. So you can always call me on my direct line, 973-384-1445. My email, Mohamed.Kandil, Mohamed.Kandil @goosehead.com. So GOOSEHEAD.com. Also, Mosurance on Instagram.
Mosurance, I love it.
Mosurance, MOESURANCE.
Well, don't worry. It is a lot. Don't worry about it. What we'll do is we'll put it here below on the video. We'll have it filled out in the description. You have an actual link. You could click on it. You could find Mohamed, and then you can, of course, pick his brain and get his advice. And if worst comes to worst, just build a relationship with a guy. He is such a pleasure to speak to and to have here.
Thank you so much. And use me as a resource. Even if it's not to come shop your insurance, if you have insurance-related questions, we're huge on education. Utilize me as a resource as well.
I know we certainly will be calling.
Yes.
If you have liked the show today, I want you to do me a favor. I want you to really help us grow. I want you to give it a like. Go ahead and do that right now. I'm waiting. Okay. Go ahead and subscribe to the channel. That really does help the algorithm, really helps us with distributing this information, valuable information. As you can see today, we want to share stuff that is going to make you successful. It's going to help you prosper. If you have not done so yet, please download the app called Los Radio. Los Radio is an application where there is a vast network of individuals doing what we do here, bringing information to the clients, to the viewers, bringing information that is just going to help you grow. And so I want you to go ahead and do that. Look for our show there. You'll see our logo. You'll see our faces there. Prosperando show. It's in Spanish, but today we're doing it in English. Go ahead and share it. Don't forget to do that. Don't forget to share it. Share it with your family. Share it with your friends. Share it with as many people as possible.
With your enemies.
And your enemies.
I was waiting. I was waiting for Leo to jump in and say,
Right.
with your enemies so that they can become your friends. With that, we'll say, we'll see you next time.